Good evening. Tonight, crisis at Aston Villa as two high-profile directors, Mervyn King and David Bernstein, hand in their resignations with immediate effect. Their departures come as the club counts the soaring cost of relegation from the Premier League. For Aston Villa, the club, it means a black hole of around £200 million. For their employees, the very real prospect of redundancy. And for the city of Birmingham, a dip in the number of foreign visitors. As Villa join Birmingham City in the Championship, Marketing Birmingham estimate that both clubs generate £50 million for the local economy. But that could suffer without Premier League football. Ian Winter reports.
The dark cloud of relegation has been hovering for the past 5 years. Everyone feared it was coming, no one was able to stop it. Next season, prepared will disappear from the club badge. But how prepared are Aston Villa for the harsh reality of life outside the top flight, when the financial impact of leaving the Premier League has never been greater? Because this summer, television revenue will increase by a massive 50% to just under £3 billion a year. That's an average of £120 million per club, making this far and away the most costly season in the history of English football for Aston Villa to get relegated.
We've seen many examples of big clubs become marooned in the Championship or have even dropped into League One.
Dr. Andrew Jones is an expert in football finance at Coventry University. He says Villa have no option but to get rid of their high-earning, underachieving players.
They've had the 7th highest wage budget in the Premier League over the last couple of seasons. £83 million in 2014-15 went out on wages. And there's only the big 6 clubs that were spending more than that.
The last time Villa were relegated from the top flight, 2 managers got the sack in a vain attempt to halt the team's decline. And if that sounds all too familiar, the main difference is the hugely inflated cost of compensation. Almost 30 years later, the similarities are uncanny, except in one crucial respect. Could you ever imagine Randy Lerner making the same confident prediction as this one from Doug Ellis following relegation in 1987?
We can walk tall, we can look people in the eye, because we're going to do everything possible to find the right manager who's going to bring us back into the First Division in one season.
The chairman chose wisely, and his bold prediction came true, thanks to Graham Taylor, but only after he delivered this damning verdict on the turmoil at Villa Park, a verdict which many believe is just as true today.
The playing side, and I'm not just talking about on the field, I'm talking about a complete it's a shambles. And what's the point of saying anything else?
Randy Lerner will be relieved to know that next season Villa will receive around £40 million as a parachute payment. But if they don't bounce straight back, that figure will decrease over the following 2 years, which explains why Chairman Steve Hollis says Villa's new manager must provide drive, direction and immediate promotion.
It is absolutely vital that they get back in year one. Randy Lerner and Aston Villa have to somehow ensure that they can get a financial strategy together that can ensure that they are competitive in the Championship, but that will require a lot more investment from him, and it may also require patience from Villa fans as well.
Villa's defeat at Old Trafford signalled the end of one battle and the beginning of the next, because now it's all about damage limitation, as the club faces an even tougher fight to regain its Premier League status as soon as possible. Ian Winter, BBC Midlands Today, Birmingham.
And Ian joins us now from Villa Park. Just when things are bad, Ian, they seem to get worse.
Well, Nick, that's absolutely right. This is clearly a rapidly developing story, a story which simply underlines the chaos which seems to be enveloping Aston Villa Football Club tonight. David Bernstein, experienced football man, joined the Aston Villa board only last month. His arrival was welcomed by Aston Villa fans, who will be shocked and disappointed to learn that he has resigned, along with the former governor of the Bank of England, Mervyn King. Now, in a statement, Aston Villa thanked the pair of them for their efforts. They said their main priority was the search for a new manager, and they also said that the chairman, Steve Hollis, is currently engaged in extensive negotiations in relation to the sale of the club. Earlier today, we asked the former Villa chairman, Doug Ellis, for his reaction to Aston Villa's relegation from the Premier League.
Wages have been paid, silly wages. This is something that Steve Hollis is dealing with. He's been talking to me about it. My dearest wish is to get back in the Premier League as quickly as possible, and hopefully this next year. Not just for me, but for 30,000 odd supporters, loyal supporters.
And Ian, what more do we know about David Bernstein's reasons for resigning?
Well, Nick, the BBC has obtained a copy of David Bernstein's resignation letter to Steve Hollis. Let me read a bit from it. He says, unfortunately, it has proved impossible to implement the agreed structure, and my position has quickly become untenable. The issues at the club are fundamental and the solutions are radical. They do not lend themselves to compromise. Meanwhile, Nigel Pearson, former Leicester City manager, remains the odds-on favourite to become the new manager at this turmoil-ridden club.
Ian, thank you. Well, of course, Aston Villa's fans are desperately hoping they can bounce back at the first attempt, but the stats prove they should take nothing for granted. Only a quarter of relegated teams win promotion at the first attempt, and this is even more worrying. 13 clubs have never returned to the Premier League after going down. Nick Clitheroe reports.
Aston Villa's shambolic and embarrassing season has finally reached its inevitable conclusion.
If Saturday was a time for anger and defiance, then today the fans are in a more reflective mood. The chairman of the Supporters Trust has already written to the board, pointing out the one thing the club must do to keep them coming back.
Really aggressive ticket pricing to make certain that existing season ticket holders renew when they're asked to do so, and they get more people coming back to Villa Park who've lapsed because of the dismal last 5 seasons.
The fans have stayed amazingly loyal. Attendances averaged just under 34,000. Compare that to last time Villa went down, when gates just over 18,000 were the norm. Villa's chairman Steve Hollis has promised fans they want to work together to restore the club's fortunes. But how easy will that be? When they last went down in 1987, they came straight back up the following season. It'll be tough to repeat that trick this time.
It's going to take investment because they've got players there that probably, are not going to want to play in the Championship, but they're not going to want to just walk away from the club. So they're going to have to be paid off. There's contracts going to have to be paid. There's a lot of work to be done, and then you've got to bring in a squad that gives you a chance to get up back into the Premier League.
We've seen teams like Middlesbrough who've struggled to get back into the Premier League. We've seen big teams that have really you look at Wolves, and they're a big club as well. And to be fair, you've got to think that now, if Villa going into the Champions, they've never done that. It's a whole new world for them.
The replica shirts in the club shop are already half price. Selling next season's, and even more importantly, match tickets to these angry fans will require a summer of decisive action. Nick Clitheroe, BBC Midlands Today.
And inevitably, you've been discussing Aston Villa's relegation on Twitter and Facebook today. Peter Wyatt posted to our Facebook page, all of those non-trying players should be forced to give up a week's wages to the staff being made redundant. Overpaid prima donnas, he says. Ros Perk says, try getting players that want to play as a team for the club, then maybe things will get better. But Stefano Lawrence says, no club is too big to go down, and Villa certainly have no divine right to come back up in one season. And finally, at Spanners AVFC tweeted us, the club can't be trusted to appoint the right person. Thanks to all of you who took the time to get in touch. I have some breaking travel news now, ironically from within sight of Villa Park. The M6 is closed northbound at Junction 6, Spaghetti Junction, due to an extensive diesel spillage covering the carriageway. All 3 lanes are closed and are diversions in place. West Midlands Fire say it could be closed for 12 hours as they deal with a 450-litre spill. That's the M6 northbound closed at Junction 6 for up to 12 hours.